All right, for Compete Corner, you've been a busy guy today, Hunty.
Indeed.
What's been going on in your world as a guy at Klue, using Klue, running Compete?
Well, it's been a busy week, honestly. So I've been prepping for a few different things. The big one was on Wednesday, made a big executive summary presentation to our SLT. So every few weeks, I bring win-loss insights to our SLT, but this week in particular, it was the big roll-up. So what have we learned over the past quarter? Actually more than the quarter at this point, and basically presenting big findings. So that was a lot of fun. We had great action items coming out of that. So again, big learning from this one was incorporating video into these conversations. So being able to actually share, here's exactly what our buyers said, here's the context around the conversation, so much better than just putting quotes on a screen. So that was, that's how the week started. Today was a bit of a different day than I was planning for. So one of our competitors, they announced a big feature release. Future Hunter here. I am not joined by Adam today. He is studying the ancient cuisine of raclette in the French Alps. So today I'm just gonna be sticking it alone. Okay, last Thursday, our competitor came out and dropped this new feature release. We have since refined our messaging, classic building in public. We've had the opportunity now to speak with our buyers, most importantly, and get their take on what the feature release looked like, what the value of this feature was, and this allowed us to actually update some of our positioning and messaging around this. So I'm not gonna get into the nitty-gritty details, but I did wanna share a little bit more about generally how we're thinking about positioning against this, this new feature release, all in the spirit of building in public. So at a very, very high level, what our competitor released and what Klue has been working on for the past few years, ultimately, we're really trying to solve the same problem, which is you've got a whole bunch of different types of competitive data. How do you find the insights in this data so that you can create the best competitive messaging, the best competitive content? In terms of our general positioning here, essentially what our competitor is doing really well is they're offering a lot of flexibility. So their ability to take a whole bunch of different types of data, put it into an LLM, very general purpose types of AI tooling here, and then be able to generate a summary of this data. So you could think, adding reviews, adding things like win-loss reports, adding blog posts into an AI prompt and generating a summary. Lots of flexibility there, although where they may be sacrificing on is in terms of the precision, the accuracy, the reliability of the output. Where Klue has focused more is building purpose-built AI tools for extracting different types of insights from your data, depending on the use case, depending on the data type. So where we may be sacrificing a little bit more in terms of the flexibility of just being able to add any type of data into this AI prompt, we ultimately are more focused on the accuracy, the precision of these AI outputs. So at a very, very high level, that's kind of how we're thinking about this. So the way that we essentially approached speaking with buyers about this, the great thing about our community, the product marketing community, the competitive intelligence community, is that when things like this happen, product marketers, they pay attention to other releases. And so what we're very fortunate about is that a lot of product marketers pay attention to this type of release, and we can go and ask them and get their opinion. In some cases, we also had customers who are switching from that competitor over to Klue, who are sort of in that process right now, who have used this feature. They've also, of course, they're going through an evaluation cycle, so they've had the ability to see a lot of Klue's functionality as well. These people are phenomenal to speak with because they have exposure to both products and they can sort of talk about the general strengths and weaknesses of each one. What I learned is that coming up with positioning and messaging, there's a few different things in there, but one, it's difficult in some cases to come up with it really quickly. If you're looking to create accurate competitive positioning and messaging, things that you really feel like are gonna resonate with your buyers, it's not always something that you can put together really quickly. And you typically wanna get a lot of different eyes on it, a lot of different perspectives within the organization. But ultimately, it's gonna boil down to, what do you feel comfortable putting out to sellers right away? Ideally, you get in front of buyers and you have the opportunity to, one, get their take on how they see the differences between your approach and your competitor's approach, But also, once we'd put together what we felt was, sort of our most compelling, our final draft of the messaging and positioning, we got it in front of a buyer and put it to the test. In some situations, maybe you don't have the opportunity to speak with a buyer. In a lot of cases, you're not going to have the opportunity to speak with someone who has used the product because it might be totally brand new. It might even not be fully launched by your competitor yet. And so you have to take those things into consideration. The best bet, I would say, is try and get in front of, some type of subject matter expert. That doesn't necessarily have to be a buyer who's evaluated both tools, but maybe try and get in front of a user of this type of solution and just get their take on it. I think that that's a really good starting approach because even though you're not going to get into the nitty-gritty details, you can get a first impression from someone who might be, in the future evaluating these types of solutions. There's another thing that I'd add to this too, which is when you're creating your first draft of your messaging, don't get too attached to it. You should be fully expecting that this is going to get ripped to shreds. That is fine. Your job here is to come up with sort of the initial perspective and then make sure that you're getting the right voices into the room, the different perspectives, especially from your product team. They're probably the people who understand best what the technical strengths and weaknesses of different features can be and different approaches. So being able to translate those maybe technical reasons into more of the marketing messaging, the things that are more, a little bit simpler to digest, I would say, is kind of the key point here. But give yourself a little bit more time and communicate that. Let your team know, or the broader organization know, that this is something that you're going to be working on that might take, a day, it might take a few days, and maybe even try and give them some very, very high level messaging, or at least a response that they can give to their customer in the meantime. Something like, hey, we've seen this, we're diving into it, curious to get your first impressions. If you have your customer success managers, your AEs who are sending that out, and if they get responses, maybe you end up getting that perspective from your own buyers. And that's something that can then feed into your messaging. So there's a few different things that I would think about if I could go back and do this again on Thursday. On the Coffee and Compete pod, we are all about building in public. And that's exactly why we wanted to come back here and show what this actually looks like. Sometimes when you've got a competitor release that comes out, you don't have the advantage of time, the benefit of time, to be able to, really dig into all the different things that you wish that you wanted to create the perfect messaging right off the bat. Sometimes you build a first draft, you go back, you build a second draft, and as you learn more, as you speak to your buyers, you refine your messaging. And that's just how things go. That is the nature of working in competitive enablement. Thank you for coming along on this ride and seeing what kind of progress we've made over the past few days and what this experience was like from someone who's in the competitive enablement seat at the competitive enablement company.